Grace Kids. My name is Miss Molly, and I am one of the teachers here with Grace Kids. Now, the last few weeks, we've been learning what happened when the Israelites came into the Promised Land. Remember, they went around doing the same thing over and over. We call it the cycle of the judges. And we can use the alphabet to help us kind of remember what happened. The first is a big word that starts with A, apostasy. Now that just means that the Israelites didn't follow the one true God. They worshiped idols and false gods, and that led them into B, bondage. Their enemies came in and made them slaves. And things were hard in their lives, and eventually they would cry out to God, C. And when they did, every time, God was good, and he would send a D, deliverer, or a judge, and that person would bring in a time of peace in the land and ease, E, for all the people, until they forgot about God and the whole thing started over again. So, our story today comes from Judges 6. It starts like this. The angel of the Lord sat under an oak tree and called out to a man named Gideon, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Now, the truth about Gideon is that he was hiding. He was so afraid of the Midianites when that angel called to him. And he was the least in his family, and they were the least in all of the tribes of Israel. He was not known as a mighty warrior. But God had called him. And God said, "Gideon, I've got a great plan for how we'll do this." And this was his plan. He said, "I'll be with you." And that would be enough for Gideon to deliver the Israelites. So Gideon rallied all his troops together, and when he did, he had 32,000 men, which sounds like a lot until you know that the Midianites had 135,000 men. That meant for every one of Gideon's men, there were 4 of the enemy. Gideon was afraid. He said, "God, I need a sign. I'm going to take this piece of fleece and I'm going to lay it down on the ground. And when I come back in the morning, if the fleece is wet and the ground is dry, I'll believe that you will keep your promise." Now God says, don't put the Lord your God to the test. But he was gracious with Gideon. And he did what Gideon asked. When Gideon came back the next morning, that fleece was so wet, they could wring it out and fill a bowl with water. See, God was showing Gideon he would keep his promise. So Gideon got a little more bold and said, "So tomorrow morning, could we do the same thing but opposite? The fleece could be dry and the ground wet." And God did just that. He said, "Gideon, I'm a God who keeps my promises." But now God had a little test of his own. God said, "Gideon, 32,000, we don't need that many soldiers to deliver the Israelites. If anyone's afraid, send them home." Gideon obeyed God, and he did that, and there were 10,000 soldiers remaining. Just 10,000. So God said, "We still don't need that many. Bring them down to the river and have everybody drink some water." When they did, God said, "Anybody who reaches down, puts their mouth to the water and laps the water up like a dog, send them home. Anybody who brings the water to drink like this, those, Gideon, are your soldiers." And when he did that, there were only 300 soldiers left. Now God was showing Gideon it wasn't by his might or his power or his big army that he would deliver them. It was God's might and God's power. With 300, that meant for every one of Gideon's soldiers, there were 400 of the Midianite soldiers. Those were not very good odds, but remember, God had said, "I'll be with you," and that would be enough. And he was, because that night they carried torches and they blew trumpets and they shattered glass pitchers and they stormed into the Midianite camp. God made such confusion that the Midianites fought each other, and God gave Israel the victory. Now, God teaches us a lot of things through Gideon's story. He teaches us, like through all the judges, gives us a picture of our real deliverer. That's Jesus. He also reminds us again, like he has through all of our Old Testament stories since last fall, he is a God that keeps his promises. Now, before I go, we're going to go over our summer memory verse. That is Psalm 19. And remember, Miss Tondi started us off last week. It talks about the heavens and how they declare the glory of God. Now, verse 2 is where we're starting today. And it says, day to day, they, the heavens, pour forth speech. So do it with me. Here's our first sign. Here's your horizon. This is the sign for day. The sun is coming up. But it's not just one day. It's day after day. And what do the heavens do? They pour forth speech. Now, this is the sign for shout. Because the heavens aren't whispering or just talking about how great God is. It's like they're shouting. So they pour forth speech. Now here's our horizon again for the sign for night. Not just one night, night after night. And what do they do night after night? They display, here's the sign we learned last week for show. They display knowledge. Just by their existence, the heavens make God known. So, one last time, let's do the whole thing from the beginning together, all right? The heavens declare the glory of God. The sky above proclaims his handiwork. Day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they display knowledge. Great job, everyone. It's been so much fun to be with you.